Hello and welcome to another video today. As you can probably tell, I am joined once again by Scott.
Yeah.
And
appropriately
what have you got
on today?
armed.
You got what?
Appropriately armed. I have all the elements required to deal with stupidity. Specifically...
Is there one specifically for me?
Yes. Specifically, we're dealing today with your stupidity.
Right.
Would it be fair to say...
You haven't got enough film in the camera.
Would it be fair to say that you are a literary snob?
No.
How many books would you say that you've read the first handful of lines to at most, and then said, this is not a good enough book for me, I'm going to put it down and not read it?
You must. You do the same. You do the same.
No. I pretty much finish everything at the start.
But hang on, in my defence, don't you think that there's too much time required to read a book, and if it's a bad book, that's a waste of your time?
How do you know if you don't finish it? If you've only read the first page, you've no way of knowing.
Because Act 1 and Act 2 will certainly tell you if you want to read Act 3.
But line 1 and line 2 won't.
Oh, I don't know. This will be good.
Well, this is what we're going to put to the test today.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read you first line of a random selection of books.
That I don't know.
That you don't know anything about them. I picked them at random. Some of them are literary, some of them perhaps less so.
Yeah.
And we're going to see what you can tell about a book from its first line. And that's why I have down here a box. I'm going to use that box to hide the book from you while I read from it. Shall we begin? So this is the box. You can see magic. There's no magic trick.
It's the shittest show on earth.
there's no Debbie McGee.
Yeah. It's probably not anymore, is there? Or is there?
Yeah, she's on TV.
She's still on TV, is she?
Okay, so the first line is the riders entered town in a dusty wedge.
In a dusty wedge? Read it again.
The riders entered town in a dusty wedge.
Yeah, I think I would. Do you know what? Potentially, I think I would.
Shall I read on?
Yeah.
Shall I give you the first paragraph?
Go on then, yeah.
The riders entered town in a dusty wedge. They slowed their horses to a walk as they passed the blacksmith's shop. The smith paused at his anvil and watched with open curiosity as they proceeded up street. A group of Mexicans mounted on fiery ponies with Spanish rigging was an unusual sight in Charleston.
It's setting up a lot, isn't it? The opening.
Yeah.
It's setting up a lot of difference. You've got obviously the newcomers to the town, so I quite like that dynamic of the foreign against the recognisable and so forth. I quite like that.
Fiery ponies? Is that...
It's what, sorry?
Fiery ponies and dusty wedge. Is that an interesting use of adjectives that makes it a little bit, as terms of language, a little bit more interesting?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I think I probably would read more. I mean, is it a Western, obviously?
It is a Western.
See, I've never read a Western. No. And that might be... And if a Western... if it's a Western film, for example, or a film that I've watched sort of incorporates a bit of Western in it, I quite like that. So... Maybe.
I like this idea that it's an unusual sight, something new. You know straight away something is going to happen, something unexpected, or perhaps not that unexpected, because this book is something pretty famous. Have you heard enough now to think, I probably would read on?
I think I would read on.
Do you want to know what the book is? The book is Wired Up by Matt Brown. Braun.
Okay.
So...
Only because I think it sets up straight away, as I say, you've got these new people coming to a certain place, and that usually means differences, conflict, change, and so forth. So, and you get all these different values of these different people coming together and sort of cultural clashes and stuff. So the potential for interest is quite good.
Rating out of 10?
Out of what? 10?
Out of 10, yeah. In terms of the use of the language, the hook to make you want to read on.
It's probably quite low, isn't it? It's not wow, is it? It's enough to pique your interest, but it's not. It's not.
I don't know what you consider a low, though. I would say that's interested me enough to make me go, that's actually better than I thought. I'd read more. So easily a 6, perhaps even a 7 out.
If you've got A Tale of Two Cities, at the top as 10. Best of times, the worst of times, da 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 da. Where would you sit that? It's nowhere near like Dickens, is it? You know.
Either
I think
a
it's a
really
good 5,
strong
don't you?
6 or a 7.
You're going higher than me.
Yeah. Because you're a literary snob.
Did you ride in on your fiery horse this afternoon? We're clashing.
So we're going to move on to book 2. Oh, one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change all of the names so that you can't guess the book from the names.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change all of the characters to Mary or Fred Bloggs. All right?
That would incite a bit of comedy, maybe.
But because there's 2 women at the start of this one, I'm going to go with Mary and Edith Bloggs. All right?
Right.
Edith, said Mary Bloggs gently. Edith. That is your first line.
Do it again, go on, do it again.
Edith, said Mary Bloggs gently. Edith.
Well, I mean, you would certainly read the next line, wouldn't you? Just to see what they're going on about.
Okay. But as Mary Bloggs half suspected, Edith had fallen asleep. She lay curled up on the sofa in the back drawing room in Harley Street, looking very lovely in her white muslin and blue ribbons.
I mean, it seems intensely Victorian to me. It really seems of that time of writing. I know that's a long period of time, but it certainly seems like that to me. I've read a lot of that in my studies, so I probably would make me read on.
Do you want me to read you a little bit more?
Yeah, just a touch, just to let's see what's happening if they swirl their tea round vigorously.
If Titania had ever been dressed in white muslin and blue ribbons and had fallen asleep on a crimson damask sofa in a back drawing room, Edith might have been taken for her. Mary Bloggs was struck afresh by her cousin's beauty. They had grown up together from childhood, and all along Edith had been remarked upon by everyone except Mary Bloggs for her prettiness.
It's going to sound really ridiculous, but it's something that sounds like I should read more of. Only because it's in that same sort of vein as Victorian work. That
so if you feel like this is Victorian
I hope I'm right.
then rather than a historical fiction, perhaps, you're thinking this is Victorian.
I was thinking it was. Yeah, I think I was, but now you've said that, I wonder if I'm way off the mark.
Would it make any difference to you if it was faux Victorian or real Victorian?
No, because if they've established the right tone, which to my ear they have, then I suppose it doesn't matter.
And what about it would make you go, right, yeah, that makes me want to read on?
It seems to me that it's very character driven, so it would feel more of a literary work than perhaps the Western we've just read out. So I don't know, it's very hard to define literary, isn't it? But that would perhaps make me want to read more, because I do like character driven work better than just action. So that might.
So this would be confirmation then of you being a literary snob, because you're going, it feels literary, even though it doesn't feel particularly interesting in terms of the situation.
The thing is, right,
you're prepared to give it a go.
Prepared to give it more of a go, because in the context of something that is more literary and character driven, it's usually the smaller things, the dynamics of the relationship, or the something of symbolism and so forth, makes it much more interesting. I wish I could see the reflection in your eyes what book it is.
So you think?
So would I read more? I would read more just to establish what I was actually reading. Whereas interestingly, that Western, you kind of knew it was a Western, but with that, it gives you more questions about what is it, what genre is it, when was it written.
Well, you said it was Victorian.
I felt it was Victorian,
and you were right. And you were right, because it's Elizabeth Gaskell. It's North.
I've
and
not
South.
read Gaskell, funny enough. But right.
So this is one of the more literary offerings that I put in here to try and fox you, but you recognised it straight away.
Yeah. If it's like a faux Victorian, like a historical plot book, there would usually be something to establish that it's set in 18 something, and then there'd usually be an inciting incident, wouldn't there? There'd be like a murder, or you'd certainly have a much more, I think, dramatic beginning if it was faux, whatever setting.
Score out of 10?
That's tricky again, isn't it? You see, bringing the score into it makes it instantly comparable to the 5 of the Western. Wow, I mean, if you're basing it just on those two, who did you say, Edith and? Not much has happened. I mean, there wasn't anything fiery about the language, Probably the Western actually uses more stylistics, if you like, of language more than that one. So I don't know. God, can we say 5 and then maybe
You're going to sit on the fence with every one, aren't you?
that's a 5. That.
See, I would agree with you there. I would probably put that as a 5 because there isn't anything particularly interesting in the language or exciting in the setup and premise.
Yeah.
There's nothing really to hook you in beyond the lure of the Victorian.
To be honest, it's got to be lower than a 5 because the other one hooked us in. You know, that one kind of didn't it? Sort of something and nothing. So it's got to be lower than 5. I think it's going to have to be a 4. Do you think?
Wow, you're going down to a 4. I'm going to stick with 5 because I already said that the Western one was probably a 7.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah, go.
Discontent ruled the stars, and there were portents in the heavens.
Read it again.
Discontent ruled the stars, and there were portents in the heavens.
Oh my God. Would you read on? I don't know because it instantly makes out astrology to me, and I just think, appalling attempt at. Go on, do some more. Go on.
So that first line doesn't give you enough to decide, but you're.
I am leaning towards a direction already. Go on, do it just one more time. Okay. Sorry.
Discontent ruled the stars, and there were portents in the heavens.
I just think, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, it could be.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I know what it is.
You read more sci-fi and stuff. But
it could be science fiction. It could be talking about some sort of empire on the verge of collapse, that sort of thing.
Yeah. It could date it back to when people are more superstitious, perhaps. I think being in this non-superstitious age, anything about stars and portents and, something coming,
Do you take any intertextuality there with something like Romeo and Juliet?
I don't. Do you know what? As much as I'd like to know that more, I don't know that well enough, really. Go on, do some more.
Well, I can only remember the star-crossed lovers.
Yeah.
And two houses, both alike in dignity.
Right, yeah.
And then from fatal loins, pause force, lovers.
We're not giving English graduates a very good reputation, are we?
We're not. And the fact that I taught Romeo and Juliet last year as well. I still can't remember.
At least I haven't looked at it since year 8 and when I was 14.
Well, I haven't looked at it since June.
You should be knowing it word for word. You should be doing Romeo's bloody monologues and stuff.
For me, I don't have enough here to make a decision. I would probably read the next bit.
Yeah.
Is that how you're feeling?
Yeah, I mean, although I did scorn initially, I would still read the next.
Right. On the 4th day of Illyria, which follows the feast of consanguinity, a great comet was seen in the night sky. It crossed east to west over the tree and lasted for half a fortnight. It left a black scar on the flesh of existence, a scar that glowed and lingered.
Do you know what? I wouldn't read on. I think it's trying to do too much. There's too much arbitrary kind of language. I can't get a hold on anything at all.
There's nothing in there that makes you go, another paragraph? Or you would just say, I'm done here?
I might say I'm done. I don't want to come across as arrogant or anything, but I think I probably would say I'm done. What about you? Would you read more?
I think I would carry on.
Yeah.
Because I just haven't got enough yet to make any decision.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read the next paragraph aloud and then you can see whether it completely confirms or denies where you are.
Right. Cool.
Faces formed within the time scar. Only a very few were capable of discerning their existence. None understood their implication. The faces danced and leered and mocked their ignorant observers. Frustrated or simply terrified, the few who could see turned away or deliberately placed a calming interpretation on what had troubled their minds. So is like fortune telling, astrology.
It's so panoramic, isn't it? And we're not getting close enough to anybody to really get this sense of what's going on, I don't think.
You see, I deliberately picked this one because I know this author.
Yeah.
And I had a feeling of them as being perhaps sometimes quite wordy, and writing quite a lot without saying very much.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where that is.
Where it's making me feel, what it's making me feel. So,
wordy but not giving very much. It's like, what's all that about?
It does feel like that, yeah.
So, have you made a decision?
I think so. Maybe not from the very first line, but from the... Did you read the next paragraph? And then the next paragraph? Yeah, so maybe by the end of the first paragraph, really.
The book was Spellsinger by Alan Dean Foster, which I have actually read.
Oh, right.
In fact, I read the first 6 books of this series. I used to be quite into Alan Dean Foster.
Yeah.
He does tend to write a lot, and sometimes you go, I don't know what you're talking about there. It's like, he did a lot of novelizations, things like Aliens and Star Wars, and if you read the start of them and go, okay, if I didn't know that you were describing the opening scene of Star Wars or Aliens, I would have no clue what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
I don't really feel that's the case here. This is, like you say, like, there's clearly trying to set up some great myth or situation.
I mean, it doesn't help here that it's not the sort of thing that I would read anyway, so that does go against it.
Because you're a snob.
No, I just not at all. I just don't read that sort of work, really. Maybe I should. I've only really read K. Dick, and.
Well, this is not sci-fi. Well, I suppose you could.
What is it then?
It's fantasy, but
fantasy.
I suppose you could.
I've definitely read little fantasy, really. The thing is, though, if you're a reader of like fantasy, then and sci-fi and fantasy generally, you want a different world, don't you? Generally, you want something different from what you see out of your window. So that might be what people would expect, and that would be enough to make them read on. Definitely, I'm thinking a 4 for me.
Yeah,
because.
That's what you gave Gaskell.
Yeah, but going back to the setting of the Western, I know that was only a 5, but at least that gave us characters, it gave us the setting, and it gave us something that's going to happen differently. I know that it kind of does quite a lot in terms of setting and setting up, but it's probably just not to my taste. I think that's what it is. And so much of reading is about your own tastes, isn't it?
The first line actually gives you what the first 3 paragraphs do, that there's bad signs in the sky.
Yeah.
And it's like, is the rest of it poetic enough to build on that, or is it just saying the same thing?
Yeah,
so
I see what you mean.
I'm kind of like, maybe if I was feeling generous, I'd say like a poor 6. So what did you give it?
4.
4.
So what have I had? 2 4s and a 5.
2 4s and a 5, because you're a literary snob. Literally a literary snob.
Not necessarily, because old Gaskell there, she only got a 5.
This starts with a quote from some other text, so I'm going to read that to you to see if that makes a difference to you. But then I won't.
What is that? Literally the bit before the first paragraph? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to read you. It's a poem, but it's a short one. I'm going to read you the first 4 lines, which is only about 12 words.
Right. Is it a recognisable poem or not?
Maybe. Depends how good you are with your poetry.
Well, not very good.
Little fly, thy summer's play, my thoughtless hand has brushed away.
Oh. Read some more.
Little fly, thy summer's play, my thoughtless hand has brushed away.
Yeah.
Am not I a fly like thee, or art not thou a man like me? For I dance and drink and sing, till some blind hand shall brush my wing.
What's that?
It's William Blake, the fly.
Oh, I don't know. No, I didn't study William Blake.
Would it make any difference starting with a poem like that, whether you recognise the poem or not? Would it make a difference?
It probably would, because I'd think, why is the author using this poem?
I would be more concerned than drawn in, though, because I'd be like, this might well be a load of pretentious tosh.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That's what I was going to say initially, was if it's just too obscure, if you can't get a handle on why they've used this poem, or even a quote, a sentence or something, it can make it off-putting, I think.
It might also, as well, just even this amount of a poem might well tell you what's about to happen, which I don't really care for. So I'm underwhelmed.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
I am intrigued.
You're intrigued.
Just to see why
you would read on.
They're doing it. Yeah, okay. Definitely. Yeah.
So again, there's another weird bit here, because this bit here is in italics, and I don't know why.
No, right.
Okay, so I'm going to read you a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I'll read you the first sentence.
Okay.
Or the first line. Then, if need be, I'll read a bit more. But then again, after that, it stops being in italics, so I don't know why we've got this 3 broken up parts of the introduction. So it's a bit weird. But I'll read you the first line of the text.
Okay.
By human standards, it could not possibly have been artificial. It was the size of a world.
I'd read on, would you?
I'm a little bit worried about the poem.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'll be like, yeah, carry on.
It's the size of the world, did you say?
Yeah, so shall I carry on?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
But it was so oddly and intricately shaped, so clearly intended for some complex purpose, that it could only have been the expression of an idea.
Yeah, I probably would read on, yeah, definitely.
Right. I'm going to skip the rest of the italics section.
Right. Oh, yeah, you see, that might be, yes.
Because there's a little bit more of it.
Yeah.
But I want to see what you make of the actual first line proper. When they pulled her out, she was not crying at all.
It's an interesting setup, isn't it? Because you've got the poetry, you've got that little bit we just had, and then you're kind of into. It seems like you're into a bit of a mystery here. You know, what's why? Who's coming out? Who's being pulled up? Sorry, yeah. I would read on, definitely.
I don't know what she's being pulled out of there. You assume it's like giving birth, but it could be something else. Shall I carry on a little bit more? Her tiny brow was wrinkled, and then her eyes grew wide. She looked at the bright lights, the white and green clad figures, the woman lying on the table below her. Somehow familiar sounds washed over her. On her face was an odd expression for a newborn. Puzzlement, perhaps.
Slipping away from me a bit, is it you? Washed over her,
What's weird is there's another paragraph break and it seems to jump forward in time to something else after that, and you're just like, this is really fragmented. I don't really... I mean, there's nothing in there in terms of like what I've read that's bad. It's just like, what are you doing?
Well, I mean, the writing itself, wide eyes and washed over, it's starting to sound... Not, I don't mean amateurish, but I just mean not well thought out. It's very accessible, of course, but they're almost sort of cliches. It's that's the problem with that type of writing, is if you always go to the easiest phrase, wide eyes. I mean, it doesn't have any meaning to me, really. Does it? It's
so far I've read bits of 3 parts of the book, and then I can see that there's another part of the book. I'm only on the first page, or a little bit over the second page, but that poem, which is not very long, takes up an awful lot of the first page. And I don't know what the purpose of anything that I've read is yet.
No, I mean the stuff about the complexity of the idea, that may not even be the author's actual words. It might be another quote. Because
it's in italics, I don't know. So it's weird.
You might have to read a bit more.
Would it make any difference to you if I told you that it was by a Pulitzer Prize winner?
Not really, because I mean...
Let me read you the rest of the italics section, and then you'll have like the whole of more or less the first page. There's the poem, and then there's, by human standards, it could not possibly have been artificial. It was the size of a world, but it was so oddly and intricately shaped, so clearly intended for some complex purpose, that it could only have been the expression of an idea. Gliding in polar orbit about the same blue-white star, it resembled some immense imperfect polyhedron, encrusted with millions of bowl-shaped barnacles. Every bowl was aimed at a particular part of the sky. Every constellation was being attended to. The polyhedral world had been performing its enigmatic function for eons. It was very patient. It could afford to wait forever.
Sounded like Italian Calvino to me.
I don't like that. I don't like it, but it probably wouldn't put me off reading more.
Yeah.
But it's starting to be like pretentious.
Yeah, it's really
with the poem and then that being that pretentious. I'm kind of like, oh God, I'm probably not going to like this.
No, and there's a real disparity between that writing in italics and obviously the poem and what we're writing about the character, it seems to me.
See, the 4th bit begins when she was 2 years old, so we've jumped ahead again.
Yeah. I'd probably read a little bit more.
put me off, but it's not drawn me in at all.
No.
I would say that that's the worst of them all so far. I don't know what I've actually given the others, but I'd give that like a 4.
Yeah. Probably a 4 or... I don't know, because I need to understand if the writing in the italics is the author's or if that's just somebody else's. Who's it?
It's Contact by Carl Sagan.
Oh, really?
It was made into a film, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Is it the film with Jodie Foster?
I've got... I can't remember. I've got the film at home, actually.
I'm trying to remember...
Contact,
no, the one with Sharon Stone was Sphere.
Yes, I've got Sphere too.
And this is the one with Jodie Foster, I think, Contact. And it ends with they just drive around the space and then come back a bit. It's a bit 2001, it ends a little bit like that as well. And there's nothing in there that makes me feel good about that book. It worries me more than anything. But I probably would still carry on.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, most of the chapters begin with a poem or a line from the book.
Yeah. You find that quite a lot with science fiction.
Do you?
Yeah. I think they try to, people don't take science fiction seriously, so I'm going to be, look how clever and well read I am. And it's kind of like, you're actually just pretentious.
Yeah. There's a bit from Romeo and Juliet.
Is there?
Yeah.
Really?
Romeo, take down your jeans. I didn't recognise that as Shakespeare, did you? No, it's Oh Speak Again, Bright Angel.
It's Act 1, Scene 3. Okay, this is quite a long sentence to begin a book with.
Right.
So you're going to get the whole thing. There were snowdrifts at the curbs and snow-buried benches in the parks and snow caps on the street signs and fire hydrants and on the newel posts for the subway entrances.
Oh, was that?
Yeah.
I thought it'd be longer than that. Yeah, I would read on, yeah.
There were 4 inches so far, and they were thinking maybe 10 when all was said and done.
Yeah, I think I would read more.
That was the first paragraph.
Right.
So I'll give you the second paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
4 inches was laughable somewhere like Maine, but in Manhattan, on a dark early November evening, it cancels plans and sends people indoors.
It is slipping away from me a little bit here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that the next paragraph, you're just going to go, absolutely not. I'm not interested at all, because I've already looked a little bit ahead, obviously, as I've been reading. Shall I give you the next paragraph? So you've made it 2 paragraphs in and you're undecided, but you're leaning towards...
It is slipping away,
yeah. Not for me. Right. The 2 black-clad figures on the BMW R1200 RT Sport motorcycle that rolled slowly north up Amsterdam Avenue near 135 Street not only knew that, they had planned on it. They'd been waiting on the cold, snowy conditions for the last month.
It's not something I would carry on reading.
Let me give you the next paragraph, right?
On,
and then you can be like, because I'm surprised that you're even on the fence in a slightly. I thought you'd just be like, no.
Yeah.
The Beamer's engine thrummed steadily as the City College of New York campus appeared on their right. First the big, ugly, modern box store-like classroom buildings, then the older, original Harry Potter-like Gothic ones.
Oh, brilliant. No, I wouldn't read that. Would you read that?
There's 2 parts where it really starts to lose me. When it says, on the BMW R1200 RT Sport motorcycle, it's like, do we need all of that? Yeah. Unless this is specifically about... This, then I'm like, this is either for petrol heads, or it's just written by an idiot. And then when it called it a Beamer in the next paragraph, I'm just like, no. At what point would you say no?
Just read that very first line again about the snow.
There were snowdrifts at the curbs and snow-buried benches in the parks and snow caps on the street signs and fire hydrants and on the newel posts for the subway entrances. It's like there is too many ands in that sentence.
Yeah, it's quite convoluted, isn't it?
It makes it awkward.
Yeah.
Because when you go, there were snowdrifts at the curbs and snow-buried benches in the parks, you've got a compound sentence there. It's 2 simple sentences together with an and. But then you've got and snow caps on the street signs and fire hydrants. But that and is not making that another compound. It's not joining another sentence in. It's adding another part to what is the third clause, the third part of the compound sentence. And it's just like, that is awkward.
Yeah, you almost trip up when you read it aloud, don't you, really?
Yeah. And then he does that twice, because it should be, and snow caps on the streets, fire hydrants, and on the newel posts, because he's doing 3 parts of a list, but he uses and twice.
Yeah.
So I read that and I was like, it's awkward, it's really badly written.
It's an odd choice. I wonder why the editor did.
I guess it's trying to create like a rhythm or a movement, but you're working against yourself when you talk about snowdrifts, because you immediately are associating no rhythm. Snowdrifts don't tend to have rhythm. You would use snowdrifts, really, in my opinion, you'd use them to mask a rhythm. So I'm thinking he's working against himself there, which is why I'm kind of like...
It kind of just labours maybe how thick the snow is.
Yeah.
That's all it does, isn't it?
Also, then it's kind of like, in rhetoric, it would be a blank statement.
Yeah.
They were 4 inches so far, and they were thinking maybe 10 when all is said and done. It's like, well, who are they?
Yeah.
Should I take their opinion as being valuable? You're giving me nothing. I kind of like that first paragraph. I'm like, that's pretty badly written, and I don't like that.
I think it was the next line after the they bit which made me think probably not.
4 inches were laughable somewhere like Maine, but in Manhattan on a dark early November evening it cancels plans and sends people indoors. See, that I know everything about everybody is a Lee Childism, but this is not a Lee Child book.
Yeah.
Do you want to know who it is?
Oh.
You'll laugh when I show you, because you'll know that I picked this to try and trip you up.
Oh, right, hang on. I was going to say, was it you?
It's James Patterson, Bullseye.
I was thinking either Stephen Leather. I did think Patterson, but not...
I should have let you try and guess then,
yeah,
shouldn't I?
I was thinking Stephen Leather.
Is it one you've read before?
No, I've probably only read a few of his now.
Patterson and Michael Ledwidge?
Yeah, so probably Ledwidge wrote it. And Patterson gave it his icing on the top.
He's got a rubber stamp.
Yeah.
Patterson approved.
Yeah.
The way it goes.
Yeah.
I would say this is like a 4, maybe even a 3.
Yeah, I think it's probably a 3, isn't it? What is it, do you think you're looking for when you read a first line?
I don't think I've ever seen the first line that was so good it was like, you must read the rest of this. And I don't think that I've ever seen one that was so bad.
What
that
about
like,
Bradbury and stuff like that? You know, it's a pleasure to burn. I mean, that to me makes me think, wow. Did you know what I mean? I think it does. Or going back to Orwell, the clock's struck 13.
But exactly like the first line of Spellsinger, I would still read the next paragraph or two and see where it was going.
Yeah.
I'd be like, this is promising, but it's not a deal breaker if it's not promising.
I think you can tell quite quickly whether it's something you are going to read. I think almost unless it's a fragment and the first line is really short, then you're obviously not going to have enough. But I think you can almost get a feeling for it, can't you? Whether you're going to read on or not.
You have paratext and covers and things like that are all so important. Like reading the back cover sometimes. Like I said, I try not to. But if
as I say, it's almost like meeting somebody for the first time. You generally know, although you can be wrong, of course, but you generally know whether you're going to like somebody or not.
It's very risky to base all of that on a first impression.